think one of the most important thing is also to look into their social emotional needs, right? Because there are also children that are really very frustrated, and that becomes what we call a social emotional motivational barrier to learning. And sometimes that has to be addressed first. We want to teach them phonics and all that, but some of them already have some bad experience or phobia towards it because it was not taught to them in the right way. So we must remember that I always say we must give them that hope, that optimism that they will improve with time. And how you do it is to give them a taste and experience of success. And we say success breeds success. If they don't think that they're going to be successful in learning to read, and they come to the conclusion that, oh, I'm just a boy that cannot read, or I'm just a girl that cannot read, then it's very hard to move further.
So the context was I was trying to teach my child Chinese comprehension. It's an assessment, right? Chinese comprehension. So there was a passage I was supposed to read. Of course, there were a lot of words he didn't know. And then so we came across this unfamiliar word like 邀请, right? Invite. So I said, oh, this word is 邀请, invite. Then we read, and again, a lot of other words we don't know, so we had to explain other words. Then we came back to the same word. Oh, what's this word? Same as this one. 邀请. And then it happened like 5 times, and each time I was speaking louder and louder at him, as if the volume of my words would kind of just penetrate through his brain.
The emotional thermometer also going up, right?
Exactly.
I would like to highlight that there are some red flags though. We call them atypical speech patterns. So these are vowel errors. So a child not being able to say vowels are a cause for concern. So vowels are sounds like your R, your E, your oo. Another atypical speech pattern will be leaving out the first sound in a word. So instead of saying house, a child might say house. Yeah, exactly. And backing. So for example, instead of saying dog, the child says gog. So duck is replaced by a go. So those are some atypical speech patterns. And the last one would be a lateral lisp. The lateral lisp occurs where the sound escapes over the sides of the tongue rather than through the central groove. So it sounds like, for example, a lateral lisp on an S would sound like this. It's very wet, slushy sound. So instead of sun, a child might say, I see the sun in the sky. Something like that.
My parents actually spoke to me and told me that, hey, this is not the right way of thinking. I think it's important to know that being diagnosed isn't a label, it's actually a way for you to receive the kind of treatment that you need. So I think after PSLE, I went to secondary school. That's when I started to understand a little bit better, like maybe it's time for me to actually, in a sense, know the truth. So it was really tough all throughout primary school. And I think as a small kid, right, like you just wondered, like, why am I so different compared to everyone else? Like, am I really actually stupid? Being diagnosed for me was like a light bulb had finally switched on. It made me realize like, hey, this is the reason why I'm not doing well academically.
When there are very low levels of serotonin in the mood centers of the brain, we will experience the symptoms of depression, like the persistent sadness, the fatigue, sleep disturbances, and the negative thoughts. So antidepressants work by increasing the levels of serotonin in the brain, and thereby it helps the child to feel better, have increase in energy, have better sleep and concentration as well. At the same time, it is important to have psychological therapy alongside the medication so that the child can learn coping strategies, develop ways to challenge the negative thoughts that they have, learn how to seek social support from the people around them. And if they are able to go through the full course of psychotherapy, then subsequently, when they have completed the course of medication, there's a greater likelihood that we'll be able to taper off the medication, and yet they're able to have the coping skills to deal with new stressors and to prevent relapses in future.
So central integration in terms of children is basically a reflection of the
brain's network. So how it processes different sensory information. There's the key 5 sensory systems, but in sensory integration, we also talk about proprioception, interoception, and the vestibular system as well. Sensory integration theory reflects a lot on how the brain organizes sensory feedback and how it helps a child understand that sensory input and then functionally participate in day-to-day and different life, play, and learning tasks.
Yes. Could you define those terms a little bit? Proprioception,
Yes.
interoception, yeah.
Yes, so proprioception is basically the feedback from the muscles and an understanding of where the body is in space. So you might hear the term a lot, heavy work and those kind of things in
Yes,
sensory
yes.
integration. That would be off the premise of proprioception feedback. Vestibular is our balance center and our movement center.
Yeah.
And interoception is the body's ability to understand things like hunger, thirst, and fatigue.
Most of the time improvisation. So I take out a whole lot of musical instruments, like could be drums or bells, press bells, desk bells, or some instruments that can give melodic sounds. Some of them are just percussive sounds. Yeah. So I don't teach them how to play. I don't hold their hands. I just model and show. And then I would match the child at where they're at. If the child is playing fast, then I will match that pace and create my music on the guitar to match that. Then we can continue to expand on that. And most of the time for young children, you will see that they will be in that musical environment for a little while. They would be singing. For children, I just mentioned about cerebral palsy. If he has gross motor difficulties, you'll be surprised he can actually stand independently and hold the instruments and play with both hands bilaterally without anybody holding and telling them, oh, you need to use both hands. We don't really use so much verbal directions, but everything is through play and musical prompt.
When you have a more simulative setting, which can be achieved through games like role-playing games, you have an environment that's naturally fun. It opens up the imagination. Students feel they are put in a less distressing position, and you get to focus more on the holistic nature of learning. This is not just academics, but other aspects like behavior as well. Through all these research papers that have been done over the years, right? I would say there can still be more research done, qualitatively especially, but fundamentally because of how games work with kids, right? Because most kids, I won't say all, but most kids love games to some degree.
Yes.
Yeah. And so if that can be woven directly into a learning program, right, that can actually move them towards having a natural interest in that direction.
So one day I asked the speech therapist innocently, does he think that Joshua come every Wednesday, so you teach him all the phonics, he'll be able to talk already, is it? She looked very sharply at me, and I'm very thankful for it. And she asked, you think this lesson is for Joshua? No, this lesson is for you, the parent, to learn phonics from me. It's not for them to learn. Once a week of speech therapy is never enough for a child. You as the parent, you need to learn from me. That's why you need to be around. You need to bring back this training from me and practice it in every possible opportunity with Joshua. So I was shocked, but now on looking back, I was very thankful for her straightforwardness.
During my O-level prelims, I unfortunately failed my humanities subjects. I remember towards the end of lesson, I was already tearing up, and my teacher, she came to me to talk to me about the results that I got as well. As I got back home, I literally broke down on the bus. But as I reached home, my teacher sent a message to me. She said that even though my results wasn't great, I still improved in my attitude towards my studies. And the very next day as well, one of my form teachers, who also teaches social studies to other classes, he was also willing to step forward to explain to me the feedback he has on how to improve in my answers, how to make it better. And it really gave me the motivation to work hard and prepare for my O-levels. And I would say that even until now, I still feel the rippling effects from my teachers' actions.
Do you want to name these teachers and give a shout out to them?
So, hi Miss Yo, hi Mr. Lee, if you're watching. I'm really doing my best now as a trainee teacher in NIE, or Rather, I would say a student doing training in NIE right now. And I say that your recognition, it really meant a lot to me. And until now, I'm still feeling the rippling effects of it.
Don't ever neglect that channel of communication with your child, because without that, it's difficult to impart the wisdom and knowledge that we've accumulated as parents through the years to the emerging adult. So work on that open communication relationship that you have as early as you can. Okay, so that's one. Another one is don't be afraid to let go at some point. Most of us are fearful of letting go because we don't want our kids to fail. And that's in many different shapes and forms. But the reality is failure is an opportunity for our child to learn. And for us too, frankly. For actually many ASD clients that I have, they learn better by failure. Yeah. So controlled failure, I think, is important to allow and accept.
We are almost opposite from art class. The only common thing is we use art materials. But really, we fit in more in the mental health world. And we're more psychotherapists by training. Art therapists, we care very little, if not at all, about art skills. It's really more using art to support mental health and using art to calm the child, calm the nervous system, and then explore emotions. Because, talking about children, but adults as well, most of us don't know why we're feeling certain ways. So we think we're feeling a certain way, but there's other emotions under the surface. But the amazing thing with art or play is a lot of unconscious things will come up. It really helps to make sense of how we're feeling so then we can deal with these emotions.
I would say that really just practicing as a parent to notice our child's efforts, whether or not they are successful is not the point. It's really more about, the fact that we see them trying and then validating that, drawing attention to that, drawing attention to efforts regardless of the results is the first thing. And the second thing would be to then kind of teach the child to be embracing of their sensitivity, of themselves. The third thing would be to teach them to set boundaries and limitations, because a person who's highly sensitive is prone to getting overwhelmed. So they do need to have strong boundaries so that they can kind of regulate and recalibrate the internal state in a timely manner so that they don't become overwhelmed and then externalize or internalize it in an unhealthy fashion.
This is such a good question because there are so many tech companies now that are doing vision training stuff on the computer. They do the online assessment. They use VR to do the training. And sometimes we get this question as well. Does your office own this equipment? So they had been drawn in to vision training because of the equipment, online on Google and then on YouTube and all that. It looks like a very impressive equipment. But my own opinion is the equipment cannot make a good diagnosis. You still need a practitioner that understands what's going on with the child. Right, rather than just getting the computer and then just start to do it. But having the computer just do the training itself may or may not get you the result.
So you still need to do the proper diagnostics to identify what the problem is to ensure.
Absolutely. Actually, even the VR machine, some of these children have vestibular problem, motion sickness and all that. Using those lenses or the VR machine right at the start is not something that I would advise. In fact, the VR machine is actually our level 2 or 3 work. Like they almost are going to graduate, then it comes in. But people are coming in asking if this can be the thing that you use first. Because it looks
cool,
impressive.
and fun,
I think the other thing that is very important, for everyone actually, not only for kids with ADHD, is sleep hygiene. Having a good routine, bedtime routine to kind of ease them into bed. So I think that's the most important part. Sometimes it could be the stimulants that actually cause the kids to actually sleep later because of the timing. Sometimes they wake up late and then they take the stimulants late and then it kind of drags on to bedtime. So that's one thing that we need to consider. The other possibility is that sometimes because the medications wear out before sleep, right? And so they tend to have a lot of racing thoughts before sleep, and sometimes treating with stimulants before bedtime may actually help. I generally don't try to give the medications at night because I believe in behavior modifications and sleep hygiene, but usually we may potentially give a small dose of stimulants to kind of help ease them in. Sometimes melatonin does help as well, especially those with people with intermittent awakening or frequent awakenings at night.
What about very young children? And I'm talking about maybe the below 5s, because I do have parents who come in and their child is not sleeping, and so they are not sleeping, and it can be a very, very stressful kind of situation. Is melatonin recommended for that age group?
I will go with sleep hygiene first because there's not much evidence on melatonin in young children, but I would say that it is better to kind of have a good routine rather than rely on external sources to actually help induce sleep.
Kids really have told me this. When adults ask questions, they already assume wrong on our behalf. So when they ask, why are you still gaming? Why are you, not doing your homework? There is already an assumption. There is an association with why that kids have made, rightfully or wrongfully, to this notion that why denotes blame. So when I ask you why you didn't do your homework, you already assume that I'm lazy and I didn't do my homework. Why you never pick up your clothes on the floor? You already assume that I'm lazy and I cannot be bothered to pick up the clothes on the floor. So it is a lot of that association that makes them very defensive. So if you already think the worst of me, right, there is already an absence of safety for me to be authentic with you. And it gets very difficult because defensiveness already cuts off all channels of communication now. But can I tell you, parents, at the end of the day, right, more than the language, it is our being when we speak to them. Because I know as a parent, when I'm anxious, I'll be like, how come? Why? Have you? Are you sure you didn't say this? I just want answers to manage the situation rather than to convey a safety for the child to be himself or herself. I think hard part for me as a parent is to manage the anxiety and be interested instead of being interrogative. But having said that, right, it takes a lot to be caught up with my child rather than be caught up by all the wrong behaviors. I almost oftentimes as a parent have to take a step back and ask myself, is this for my child? Or is this to rectify or to gain control over a situation that I think is bad for my child? They're not mutually exclusive, but I have to say that one precedes the other, because in the absence of that relationship, it's very, very difficult to help that child because we don't know what's happening.
For my job title, we do work on speech sounds and articulation, but actually our role is developing communication. That covers, it's such a big, a wide scope, we work on the non-verbal communication, understanding and using it, understanding language, understanding what's going on in the classroom, understanding instructions, being able to express ourselves, appropriate sentence length, grammar, and all the effects this has on their academics and, of course, their social communication, social interactions, and making sure that all of those come together for the child to feel successful. And usually at that point, the parent does realise and understand why their child has been referred to speech therapy based on what a professional like yourself has commented on or found through your own assessments or from what a teacher said. And then through a bit more probing, the parent's like, well, my child does that at home as well. I'm like, okay, this is helpful to know and this is what I can do to help and support you.